to sign, and we certainly appreciate him very much for doing that, because that's going to allow federal assistance to our state, including emergency protective measures, limited to assistance for mass care, including evacuation and shelter support. And obviously this is timely and a good thing, because as I'm sure you're aware, the 4 p.m. update from the National Weather Service now forecasts Laura to potentially make landfall in Louisiana on the cusp of being a Category 3 hurricane. Right now, she's still a tropical storm, but she's predicted to at least be a strong Category 2 hurricane, and right on the line with Category 3 when she makes landfall in Louisiana. And we always advise people to be prepared for a storm that is 1 degree higher, 1 level higher than forecasted anyway. So we need to be ready for a Category 3 hurricane. Just to put this into context, we haven't had a Category 3 hurricane in Louisiana since Hurricane Rita in 2005. And I know that particular year brings up horrific memories and images for all of us in Louisiana. And we also know that tremendous progress has been made in Louisiana in terms of the hurricane risk reduction system and other levees and other flood protection that we have in place. So we ask you to keep in mind that this storm, Laura, could be stronger than we previously thought. Don't let your guard down. And we also are looking at a 1-2 punch, because Laura is the second one that we're going to see. The first one is going to be Hurricane Marco. And there's also been a change in the forecast there on the track, not necessarily on the intensity with respect to Marco, but it's going to come in around the mouth of the river and then make a really hard left turn or westward turn and hug the coast for a while. So we're going to get basically a right hook from Marco and then a left hook from Laura, and to describe what that's going to look like in a little more detail. With me again today, I have meteorologist Benjamin Schott. Now, he works for the National Weather Service out of the New Orleans office, and you can see I have many other members of the team. I'm going to ask Ben to come up and brief you all. When he's completed that, I'll come back up, and then when I complete my remarks, you'll be able to ask questions of me or any of the other members of my team that you see up here. Thank you. Ben?
Good evening, everyone. Again, thank you, Governor, for inviting us from the National Weather Service to come and provide this information on a very odd meteorological event with 2 tropical systems impacting the state here in just in the course of 48 hours. So with that, I'll kick off a briefing. I have a slideshow also that you'll be able to see to talk a little bit about what we have expected over the course of the next couple of days. So some of the initial impacts when it comes as an overview for Marco will be, it has a very small wind field. So the hurricane force winds likely will be just barely along the mouth of the Mississippi and maybe along parts of southeastern Louisiana as it moves along the coast. But tropical force winds will be possible across much of southeastern Louisiana. With that also is a heavy rain threat, and we'll talk a little bit more about it and some of its impacts, and coastal flooding along with some storm surge. So we get the full gamut with Marco and what it can produce. And then behind it, within just about 48 hours, is Laura. It has all the same impacts, and like the governor was mentioning, it has a potential to be a major hurricane. So this will be something that we'll need to even pay, really close attention, especially since as Marco, as I'll show in a second, is forecasted to track along the coast. It's possible that you'll have 2 tropical systems basically within the same space over the course of about 48 hours, which can create a multiplying effect when it comes to impacts and damage. So here's the track for Marco that was released from the Hurricane Center at 4 o'clock. You can see, as the governor was mentioning, it will slow as it approaches the mouth of Mississippi, and then it will weaken slightly, become a tropical storm, and then move along the Louisiana coast. It will slow as it moves across the coast, and so you'll see impacts from it along Louisiana's coastline well into Tuesday, if not maybe Tuesday afternoon or evening. With that, again, are the watches and warnings that you see on the graphic. So you can see across southeastern Louisiana, there is tropical storm and hurricane watches and warnings up right now, as long as with storm surge. And these are all things that we are expecting for Marco when it makes impact to the southeastern coast sometime tomorrow. The earliest time of arrival for winds, as you can see here, it's really almost now. There are places along the mouth of Mississippi that are seeing some showers and thunderstorms and wind gusts right now to 30 to 40 miles per hour. So the initial insult is pretty much happening as we speak. And then that will increase its impacts with the chance of tropical storm winds as we move through the overnight hours and into tomorrow, and then along the southern coast as it moves slowly to the west, as we had mentioned earlier. Here again is just a quick look at the current storm surge warnings and watches. Almost all of southeastern Louisiana is under a storm surge warning. Anywhere from 3 to 5 or 4 to 6 feet of storm surge is likely. Outside of those areas, 2 to 4 is likely, and especially even as long as you can see across coastal Louisiana as it moves there will still be some impacts with the storm surge and some coastal flooding issues. I mentioned earlier about the rain with Marco, and so there is definitely a high chance of significant rainfall, flash flooding to occur across southeastern Louisiana. That includes the city of New Orleans and all of the North Shore, and then parts of both the Florida parishes, and then all the way down to the mouth of Mississippi. So there is a significant place here that can see 5, 10, and maybe even locally higher amounts pushing 15. And the key takeaway from this is, folks got to understand you just cannot drive in the water. You can't really see how deep the water is. If it's at nighttime, you'll have no understanding if the roadway is still even there. So that is one of the number one killers when it comes to heavy rain and flash flooding in these events, is people driving in the water. And so it's key for folks to understand that that threat will be out there through the course tomorrow into Tuesday, as there will likely be very heavy rain bands circulating around Marco in the next 24 to 36 hours. So then right after, behind Marco, we have Laura. Laura, as you can see here, is right now moving along the very southern and southeasterly portions of Cuba. It will keep working its way to the west over the course of the next couple of days. And as it comes off Cuba, that will be key, because that's when we'll have a full understanding of how organized it is and how quickly it can develop into a hurricane. Right now, as the governor mentioned, it is expected to be a Category 2, a very strong Category 2, at the upper level of that category as it approaches the coastline of Louisiana. There is definitely the possibility that it could be a little bit stronger and be a Category 3. That has significant impacts when it comes to the storm surge, and I'll hit on that here in just a moment. The reasonable time for it to start to see its effects, there may be some glancing blow along Plaquemines Parish and the far southeastern portions of the state as early as Tuesday night, but the most likely effects across southwest Louisiana will be on Wednesday morning. If you think about what I just talked about a second ago about the timing with Marco, it will be exiting the state to the west on Tuesday evening. And then less than maybe 12 to 18 hours later, the effects of Laura will be working its way into the state. There is a very narrow window between these two systems, and I can't even really put words real clearly about how remarkably odd that is to have two systems like that so close to each other, impacting the same state within such a short period of time. So because we are expecting Laura to be anywhere from a very high-end Cat 2 to a possible Cat 3, this gives a quick look at what the reasonable worst-case scenario would be for storm surge, and basically that would be 10 feet plus along the southwest Louisiana coastline. So the other interesting thing with a storm of this magnitude and that strength, if it holds like that as it makes its way inward, is that there can be effects pushing water up the rivers up to 30 miles inland. So you don't have to be just along the coast to see the impacts of the storm surge and the coastal flooding with Laura, because it's such a strong storm and it's going to be pushing so much water. The other interesting thing about Laura as compared to Marco is that it's a very large storm. Its wind field is going to be much larger than Marco's. And so there will actually be storm surge effects even in southeastern parts of Louisiana from Marco. And so it's possible there could be significant storm surge flooding across much of southeastern Louisiana. And so that is possible there of anywhere to maybe 7 to 10 feet, depending on where the track sets up and where it makes landfall along the coast. So some other considerations when it comes to Laura. We have a little bit less confidence in exactly how, again, the intensity is going to be, though the track hasn't moved as much over the course of the last 24 hours. When it comes to Laura, the other significant thing is, again, larger wind field, like I mentioned, and so it can have effects much further away from that cone. I must emphasize again, do not get so locked in onto just the cone itself. Impacts from it can be seen many, many miles outside of that, whether it be the heavy rain, flooding, tornadoes. All of that is going to happen, and especially more likely on the eastern side of that cone. So again, it's not so much to fixate on the center line or the cone, but understand those impacts can be miles away from that area and maybe even 50 to 100 miles away. And so with that, I think the last thing that I'd like to mention is that there's ways to get information from us. Make sure you're getting from reputable sources. A lot of things do fly around on the internet as we move closer to this storm. I think that's a very important thing for people to make sure where they're getting their information. And with that, I'll turn it back to the governor. And again, thank you for having me.
Let's see, do y'all have questions for Ben while he's up here? Don't leave, because y'all have some for you to take over. Thank you. Ben, thank you for the briefing, and thank you for being here with us at GOSEP. I do want to reiterate a couple of points that Ben just mentioned. Nobody should look at these cones for these two hurricanes and to say, well, I'm either inside or outside, therefore I will or I won't pay attention or take the necessary precautions. The cone is an estimate of right now where the center of those storms should track. But the fact of the matter is only 66% of the time do storms actually make landfall inside the cone. And the effects are always felt outside the cone. And clearly Laura is further out, and so nobody should be making any definitive decisions like that based on Laura at this time. But everybody needs to continue to pay attention. I do want to remind you of something that I said this morning, and that is that as a result of the weather systems that we're discussing, state offices in South Louisiana are going to be closed on Monday. We also know that many schools and school districts have already announced closures, and we would ask you to watch your local news to find out about the latest closure announcements, whether it's K through 12 or our universities and community and technical colleges. We have conducted Unified Command Group meetings since Friday. We have a statewide emergency declaration in place. All of this underscores how seriously you should take these storms. And I want you to know we're expecting significant impact from wind and potentially spawning some tornadoes as well. But for the most part, we really believe this is going to be a week where water will present the most immediate and serious hazard to the people of Louisiana. And one of the things that's going to make this very difficult to quickly help individuals, whether it's search and rescue or delivering assistance, is what Ben said a while ago. The window of time within which we may be able to operate and maneuver between the two storms may be as little as 12 hours, maybe 12 to 18 hours. And so that's going to make things very difficult from a search and rescue standpoint. It's going to make things very difficult from the standpoint of restoring electricity because those trucks can't operate when the winds get to 35 miles per hour or greater. And so you can anticipate that if your electricity goes out and I've never known us to have a hurricane without electricity going out for a number of people, that it could be out longer than would be normal. And that's why we're telling people, for all of these reasons, be prepared for you and your family for the first 72 hours. Obviously, we're going to get to you just as quickly as we possibly can, and we always tell you that the first 72 hours are on you. That's part of our plan going into it. But this one, has a greater likelihood than other storms that we've had, where it's going to be that 72 hours before you may receive some assistance. So you should be prepared to shelter in place yourself and your family for at least that long. In order to be prepared to do search and rescue, the State Fire Marshal's Office has deployed staff from Region 7 up in Shreveport and 8 in the Monroe area down towards South Louisiana, comprising 2 urban search and rescue teams with 35 members, 8 watercrafts. Each have been staged in Lafayette and in Tangipahoa Parish. GOSEP, Emergency Operations Center, is operating 24 hours a day. Crisis Action Team is working with parishes to supply sandbags and other resources as we receive requests for assistance. An update from this morning: 25 parishes have now issued emergency declarations. 12 additional parishes are in the process of completing their emergency declarations, and there may be more to follow. I do want to remind everybody that COVID-19 is prevalent throughout our state, just like it is the rest of the country. It's in every community. We cannot ease up on practicing all of the mitigation measures that we've been talking about for months now. The virus is not concerned that we have hurricanes coming. And so it's not going to take any time off, and neither can we. And it's going to make things a little more difficult, but we have to be mindful of these mitigation measures, and particularly wearing masks, social distancing, proper hygiene with washing your hands, and so forth. So please make sure you do have hand sanitizer, soap and water, and masks so that you can stay safe. We are going to pause COVID testing on Monday and Tuesday in light of the storms. If there are going to be closures beyond that, we will make that announcement later. But we do want you to get tested if you need to. If you have symptoms, or if you've been a close contact to someone who is COVID positive, and we want you to get tested as soon as possible. So pay attention to when that testing is going to be available for you. This is also an important reminder about COVID when you are sheltering in place. You need to protect yourself against COVID-19, and if you have immediate family members who cannot stay in their home for some reason, you take them in. If you're coming from different households, you need to practice the distancing to the maximum extent possible, and the wearing of masks as well. And for those reasons, congregate shelters, I should say, will be a last resort. We do have a growing number of areas that are under mandatory evacuation. I am going to read that list now because I think it's very important. And we do encourage everybody to closely follow the news and heed the warnings that come from your local governmental officials. But implemented mandatory evacuations are as follows: East and West Bank of Plaquemines Parish, Golden Meadow and Lafourche Parish, Grand Isle and Jefferson Parish, also Barataria, Crown Point, Jean Lafitte, and Lower Lafitte, all of those in Jefferson Parish. And then in Lafourche Parish, south of the Leon Terrio floodgate, and south of Zone 1 in Terrebonne Parish. For those who need to evacuate, this is what you have to do now. First of all, stay with family or friends if possible. Make hotel reservations in a safer area if that is preferable to you and available to you. If you can avoid sheltering in place with people outside of your household, you should. If you have to shelter in place with others, again, remember to wear a mask, keep distance even in your own home. And I know that's very different from anything we've experienced up to now or that I've had to say up to now, but even in your own home, if you're sheltering with people who are not part of your immediate household, you need to follow these mitigation measures. If you don't have any of these options available to you, or if you need transportation assistance, please contact your Office of Emergency Preparedness. You can find contact information under contacts at getagameplan.org. So if you go to getagameplan.org, it's going to give you all of the information that I just gave you about being prepared for hurricanes, but there's also information about contacts for your local officials. DOTD staff are on alert. They mobilize their high water signs, barricades, and other equipment that may be needed to address issues related to the storms. And Ben mentioned this a while ago, but quite often in storms like this, the thing that causes the most deaths isn't necessarily a direct impact of the wind or so forth. It is the flooding and individuals trying to drive through water when they don't know how deep that water is and whether it's safe to do so. So we are strongly encouraging everyone to not drive through water unless you are 100% sure that it is safe. Do not disregard any high water signs. And remember that there's often a current flowing across the roadway that is imperceptible to you while you're in your car. And it doesn't take much current in order to wash your car off the road. And many times when that happens, you're washed into a ditch or a stream where the water is much, much deeper than it is on the road itself. Also want to tell you about water with the rain that's going to come in and the wind, which will weaken trees from Marco, followed by additional rain and stronger winds with Laura. We can anticipate that there will be a number of trees that get blown over, potentially onto people's homes, but also onto roadways and power lines. So everybody should be aware of that as well. That's going to present a particular hazard, especially, and everyone should treat a down power line as if it is live. DOTD has activated 40 out of 110 school buses and 20 coach buses, and they're positioned half each at Lamar, Dixon, and Gonzales, and in Lafayette near the airport. The National Guard is providing the drivers, and we certainly appreciate all of them for that work. I do want to remind everyone, if you're out and about, or first of all, you shouldn't be out and about unless it's absolutely safe to do that. But if you need to see what roads are closed, either because of construction or because of high water, go to 511la.org, 511la.org, or the 511LA app, and you will see real time what roads are closed or open. I will tell you that we anticipate that our next UCG will be tomorrow morning with a call with the Weather Service. Then in the afternoon, we'll do another UCG meeting. Press conferences, I believe, are scheduled at 11:30 tomorrow and at 6 again. So that'll be the same schedule that we had today. And with that, I'm happy to take your questions, and you can direct your questions to any members of our team, and you can see that we have quite a few team members here today. Sam? Well, look, there are many reasons to believe that we're more ready for Category 3 than we have been at any point in a number of decades, and that's with all the work that is going in to protecting citizens, both their lives and their property. The hurricane risk reduction system around New Orleans, for example, but not just there, Lafourche and Terrebonne parishes and St. Mary. I mean, there have been improvements all along our coast. I never want to say that we know that we're 100% ready, because we never know exactly what Mother Nature is going to throw at us. But I'm actually confident that we are going to do well when it comes to our protection systems, and that they're going to stand up and deliver the protection that they're supposed to. But even with that, there's still going to be tremendous wind and rain. And storm surge outside of those protected areas. And really, if you look at the evacuations that have been ordered, the mandatory evacuations, those are outside of the protected areas. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Well, good.
Right now, there's no indication that it's in a weakening mode. The last indications of Marco showed it still had plenty of convection at its center, which is the heart of any tropical system, and everything that was flying into it showed it at hurricane strength. It is a very small storm, though. The wind field does not extend very far, so you are not going to see hurricane force winds much further than maybe 20 or 30 miles away from the center. Unlike what will probably be the case when we're dealing with Laura, where you could see tropical storm force winds extend maybe 100 or 150 miles away from the center. It looks like it's going to be a much larger storm. But to get back to your question directly, there's right now nothing that shows Marco is going to diminish overnight or as it approaches the mouth tomorrow morning, though it does show as it starts to move to the west tomorrow, there would be some influences because it's interacting now with landmass, and then that would actually start to diminish its strength. But that is even slowly because it is a tropical storm the entire length of the time through Tuesday afternoon as it moves across the southern Louisiana coast.
Okay. I want to thank you all for continuing to cover this, and again, we will see you at 11:30 tomorrow for the next press briefing. And we are encouraging people to do whatever it is that they have to do with the little bit of time they have left to prepare themselves and their families for these storms. Also, want to make sure you understand we don't remind you of Rita and Category 3 storms in an attempt to try to scare anybody, but we want people to take this seriously and to get prepared. That's what we need to do. And in addition to preparing, again, I encourage people to pray for our state and for the people of our state as well. So with that, we will see you all tomorrow.
1, 2, 3. Ready? Hola, buenas tardes. Estamos aquí de nuevo en la conferencia de prensa después del gobernador John Bel Edwards. Estamos aquí desde los departamentos de emergencia del gobernador. Estamos aquí con el meteorólogo encargado del Servicio Nacional de Clima, llamado el señor Benjamin Shout. Él está hablando sobre la tormenta tropical Marco. Estamos esperando que vaya a caer y vaya a llegar a Louisiana en la boca del río Mississippi. Estamos esperando que haya mucha lluvia y es la amenaza más grande que tenemos ahorita con esta tormenta. También estamos esperando que veamos mucha inundación costal, al igual que la olea muy alta de la tormenta, que podemos esperar que sea de entre 2 a 6 pies en total. Y también tenemos que recordar que después de esto va a caer el huracán Laura, menos de 48 horas después. Así que Laura tiene la potencial de ser un huracán muy peligroso, así que tenemos que tener eso por favor en mente. Hablando de la tormenta Marco, poco a poco va a ir alentándose mientras se arrima a la costa de Luisiana, así que va a tardar mucho tiempo en llegar y va a estar sobre nosotros por mucho tiempo. Los efectos los vamos a sentir hasta fines de martes y podemos ver que podemos ya sentir los vientos y podemos esperar sentir los vientos que se vayan siendo más fuertes durante vaya pasando la noche. Estamos esperando, como vamos a repetir, de una olea de tormenta de 2 a 6 pies. Estamos ahorita cuidando todas las cosas para asegurar que todo esté en orden, para que no pase a mayores con esto. Podemos esperar entre 5 a 10 pulgadas de agua, de lluvia en todo el estado. Unas áreas más severas podrían recibir hasta 15 pulgadas de agua. Otra vez le podemos repetir que por favor tengan cuidado con la agua que esté estancada en las carreteras. En base al huracán Laura, el huracán sigue moviéndose hacia el este-norte. Estamos esperando que sea una tormenta muy fuerte, categoría 2. Tiene hasta la posibilidad de convertirse en categoría 3 posiblemente. La mayoría de esos efectos se empezarán a sentir el miércoles, que son de 12 a 18 horas después de que se sienten los efectos de Marco. Va a ser una tormenta mucho más grande Laura que Marco, y la olea, aunque va a caer mayormente, el cono del huracán va a caer al oeste del estado. También se van a sentir la olea al este del estado. Van a ver los efectos de esas tormentas, se van a sentir durante un lugar mucho más grande que lo de Marco, ya que la tormenta, la olea y los vientos van a estar más vistos en todo el estado. Para recibir más información sobre las tormentas, pueden visitar el Servicio Nacional, nos pueden visitar en nuestros servicios de media social, tal como Facebook, Twitter, etcétera. Aquí sube otra vez el gobernador para decir que el cono solo es un estimado de más o menos dónde va a caer el centro de la tormenta. Muchas oficinas del estado van a estar cerradas durante mañana, al igual que muchas escuelas. Esperamos que Laura vaya a traer muchos impactos significativos, especialmente alrededor del río Atchafalaya. Hay la tormenta van a caer dentro de 12 o 18 horas después de Marco, así que tengan en cuenta que solo tenemos un breve tiempo en tratar de rescatar o de ayudar a las personas que necesitan esa ayuda. Así que, por ejemplo, si con Marco se le va la luz, pueden esperar tal vez un poquito de tiempo más tardado en que se le pueda ir a asistir y a poner otra vez la electricidad. Los servicios de GOSEP, los servicios de emergencia del gobernador, van a estar trabajando 24 horas al día para asegurar que todos obtengan la ayuda necesaria. Muchas parroquias ya han declarado un estado de emergencia y hay muchos más que siguen. Pero también tenemos que recordar que el COVID sigue entre nosotros, todavía está contagioso y tenemos que estar conscientes de tomar las medidas de mitigación necesarias para protegernos y a nuestros vecinos. Si va a ir a otra casa, a una casa ajena o sea de familia o conocidos, por favor, como sea, asegúrense de usar sus mascarillas, ya que vienen de viviendas diferentes y en sí el virus como sea se puede seguir contagiando. Hay muchos estados, muchas parroquias y ciudades en evacuación mandatoria, así que por favor visiten a sus noticias locales para asegurar que usted no esté en esa área. También recordamos que por favor si tienen que evacuar, por favor quédense con conocidos, con amigas, con familias, o por favor busquen un hotel fuera del lugar de impacto. Y volvemos a repetir, el Departamento de Transporte está listo para ayudar al cierre de las carreteras, etcétera, para asegurar de que no haya nada de peligro. Queremos recordar que, por favor, si ven agua estancada, nunca saben si hay corrientes debajo que pueden empujar el carro, agua hasta más honda que puede resultar en muerte. Así que, por favor, tengan mucho cuidado en eso. Si quieren ver más información sobre las carreteras que van a estar cerradas, por favor, pueden ir a 511la.org, 511la.org para más información sobre las carreteras cerradas. En la sección de respuestas y preguntas, el gobernador dice que él piensa que Louisiana va a estar muy bien contra tanta olea en nuestras costas porque están más fuertes, están más protegidas. Y también repite que aunque Marco va a ser una tormenta muy chiquita, tenemos que tomarla muy seriamente, ya que como sé, de cualquier manera va a traer mucha lluvia a nuestro estado, seguido por Laura. Y vuelvo a repetir que por favor mañana tengan en mente que vamos a tener otra conferencia de prensa a las 11 de la mañana, igual aquí en los servicios de emergencia del gobernador. Y por favor, todos recuerden de preparar y hacer sus preparaciones finales hoy en la tarde antes de que se llegue la noche. Muchas gracias.